So I think when I first learned that I was going to be appointed, one of the things I thought about in terms of being a judge is the important role that we have and how at our very core we're public servants. And coming up in as a young lawyer, judges were, they were kind of otherworldly figures. You didn't talk to them. You occasionally got to see them at bar events. I was always fearful. And I think when I became a judge, it was right around the same. I mean, obviously, we were at a point where a lot of public figures, President Obama, other politicians were using social media to communicate. And I asked myself the question, why shouldn't a judge use this medium, especially when we hear complaints from the general public that the Supreme Court of Justices and Court of Appeals judges are down ballot races, Superior Court's a down ballot race, these other judgeships are down ballot, and the constant refrain is we don't know enough about these courts and what they do, and even among the lawyers, there's sometimes a mystery about how are these cases processed. And so for me, the goal of the account initially was to simply provide greater transparency, greater accessibility, and I primarily do that through Twitter. I do a little bit on Facebook. It's a little bit different at the appellate court because so much of what we do is behind the scenes, which is why I wrote a law review article that Mercer published about the inner workings and culture of the Court of Appeals. That's one piece that I've used to try to create transparency. Now, will Joe Citizen want to read that? Probably not. But it's about providing the information and putting it out there in the public and letting people, if they want to read about it, they can. It is in the and Mercer, to its credit, has it on its website. That article, anybody can read it, whether you're a citizen or a lawyer. But beyond that, live streaming of oral arguments, that's another component. I was a champion for that. That was kind of my pet project. Even before I became chief, we now live stream our oral arguments, just like the Supreme Court of Georgia. That's another component. So I use my Twitter account to speak not only to the citizens in general about how we operate at the appellate level, but also to law students, to young lawyers. I try to encourage them to be civil. I try to encourage them to be professional. I talk about writing tips. I talk about oral argument tips. I talk about all sorts of different aspects of the appellate world, and we have a whole section of Twitter called Appellate Twitter that I'm involved in. And it's a great opportunity, too, to mentor. I can have folks ask me questions, what was it like being a law clerk? Or, what would you, if I want to be a clerk, how do I go about doing that? And to be able to virtually mentor young lawyers and law students it's really revolutionary, not only in Georgia, but I have people from foreign countries, who will message me or who will tweet at me and say, hey, I want to come to the United States, and I don't always have the answers, but I can at least be a vehicle to, put them in touch with the right person. So I think social media is extremely important. I think we live in a new world, and I think people my age, I'm 47, and younger, especially those that are coming up, I think are going to demand that public servants be more accessible. And social media is one component of that. And there's some pitfalls, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But I think it is, and you mentioned my article, one of the other big things that social media does beyond just discussing our courts and professionalism and appellate practice for me is just showing that you're a human being, showing that human side and letting your online persona be an accurate reflection of who you are. And I'm proud of that. I mean, I think people that read my Twitter feed or that see the things that I put up, for better or for worse, that's who I am. And I think that's a good thing for voters to see that judges are human, that we're not just, sitting in some back room all the time, that we have lives, we have families, we go to church, we go to football games, we listen to music, and let them become invested in you. I think it's the right thing to do, and it's also just good politics. My friend Justice Willett on the Supreme Court of Texas has said that if you're an elected official and you're not using social media, that's political malpractice. But I think all of those components, accessibility, transparency, and the human side, and letting people know who you are as a human being while you're serving them, I think those are all positive attributes of this medium if it's used in the appropriate way. And I think you've got two great examples here of folks that are doing it in the right way and instilling confidence in the judiciary through their social media presence.